I can't hear you.
Oh, here we go.
There you go.
Uh, so, welcome everybody to the World of Ability Podcast Network. My name is Emily Gilmer, and a podcast engineer here. And we're excited to bring you another episode of the World of Pets with Debbie Hayes. And so we have this is exciting since it's all about your pets. So you're gonna love it. It's all about our furry friends. So an animal house, as usual. But I am going to um, bring Debbie in here and kick us off.
Thank you very much. All right. We want our pets to love us. We want them to feel our unconditional love. They have unconditional love for us. We want them to feel safe with us. We also want them to live a very long life, but we want that life to be a good quality life. And David and I feel that we found a product that can boost their immune system to keep them healthy for a long time. But this really is not about that as much as it is about just discovering everything that there is to know about pets. Sometimes we laugh, sometimes we cry, but we definitely enjoy our pets. So I have tonight my co-host David Wolfram, and we have a surprise guest tonight. Anthony Dunham was on with us maybe a month or 6 weeks ago, and he has a dog that he actually got at the animal shelter that is going to be trained in the um, penal system. He's going to jail, as Anthony says. I thought that was a joke, like Anthony wasn't going to see him for 2 months, which that's part of it is true also, I think. But it's it was not. He actually literally is going to the jail to be trained by the inmates. I think it's just sounds like a wonderful program. And then we'll get some specialty training from a nonprofit that offers that. So he will fill you in a little bit more on that, and we'll find out about Cobb and why he's not quite there yet to get his training, but he will be shortly. So, David, did you want to say hello first?
Yeah, absolutely, Anthony. Welcome back to the show. Sorry I wasn't able to be on the last one, but I'm really looking forward to hearing your story.
Yeah, no problem.
So go ahead and tell us what the holdup was, and um, if people heard before, they can get a little repeat about what the program is about.
Yeah, so Cobb was supposed to leave. I think the date was the 20 something or other. Anyway, she was supposed to leave 2 weeks ago this coming Saturday. But she got delayed because the prison in Idaho where they train the dogs that were in the program previous to her ended up developing kennel cough. So they had to send all those dogs home. They had to clear out the kennels. They had to clean the kennels. And then they had to have the health department come in and say it was safe for them. So she leaves this Saturday to a freshly clean and safe environment within the state of Idaho prison system. And so just to sum up what we talked about last time, about a year ago, my dad was at a fair. We live in eastern Washington. You can't get much farther east in Washington before you get into Idaho. And so he was at a county fair in Idaho, and he came across a pamphlet and a booth set up for a thing called Canines for a Cause, an organization. He asked them what they were, and they said basically our mission is to work with veterans to give them the service animals they need at little to no cost to the veteran. So upon my getting here, and I'm here temporarily, I'm going to be back in Tucson sometime this fall, living there permanently with my kids. So I came up here temporarily to get some of my VA things straightened out and to that kind of stuff. So I reached out to Canines for a Cause. They put me in touch with a local-ish nonprofit here. The name of that nonprofit is Faithful Canine Trainer. And the nonprofit that runs Faithful Canine Trainer, which is the hat I'm wearing, they is run by Faithful Fields. Faithful Fields is run by a gentleman named Richie. Richie works with Canines for a Cause. So the two of them work together. And so the long short of it is, for about $300, I'm getting about $50,000 worth of training for Cobb. The way that they do this training is they've partnered with the state of Idaho, and the state of Idaho sends in their state trooper dog handlers, and they work side by side with the inmates as part of the inmates rehabilitation, so that they have a skill leaving prison. And these dog handlers from the state police of Idaho work side by side with these inmates to provide training for the dogs that make them certified as service animals by the time they get done with the program after 2 months.
Wow, that's so cool. I mean, do they operate with specific breeds, or do they have a broad spectrum?
No. So what the process is Canines with a Cause basically says we'll take any dog as long as the dog is able to pass the training. So I went for a really quick evaluation. Just to give you an example, Richie called me into his office at Faithful Fields. I went into his office at Faithful Fields, and he looked over my dog, and he said, let her off the leash for a couple minutes and then give her a command. Let's let her get distracted for about 10 minutes and then give her a command to come back to you, whatever the command is you give. Well, with Cobb, if she's out wandering around, because we live on a working animal ranch up here, so she wanders everywhere she goes. And so when she's wandering around, if I say to her, Cobb, stay with me, she comes right over and sits right next to me, doesn't move until I tell her you can go. So we're sitting in Richie's office, and she's pushing a golf ball around, and she's playing, and she's sniffing around, and she's getting distracted. I said, Cobb, come to me. She came right over and sat right next to the chair I was at and just sat there. And Richie went, oh my goodness. He said, that's amazing. And so they just want to see how well your dog can follow commands, and if your dog is healthy enough, basically, to go through the program. And that's basically the only vetting they do of the dogs.
So tell us a little bit about what she's going to be trained to do and in regard to helping you.
So for me,
I know we did this before, but
yeah,
that's all right.
So for me specifically, the two main things are going to be a reminder for my daily medications, as well as to help me. So I have these little mesh bags that I put my daily medication is. And when I'm out and about, let's say I'm out at a restaurant, tomorrow I'm having lunch with my pastor. So let's say I was having lunch with my pastor and I dropped the bag. Because of my back injuries and the extent of some of my physical limitations, it's difficult for me to bend over. So I would give her a command and she would pick the bag up and hand it to me. And the same thing with anything on the floor. If I gave her the command to pick up my shoes, she'll be trained to pick up the shoes and hand them to me. So she'll be trained to pick things up off the floor. She'll also be trained to pick things up off the floor and bring me my cane, retrieve me my cane. I have difficulties getting in and out of bed at night and in the mornings because of the extent of my injuries. And then kind of the secondary thing she's going to be trained for is how to help me during times of PTSD and depression.
That's a big thing. I mean, every pet that I've ever had has helped me through those types of situations. So can you expand on how you could possibly train your pet in the short term? Do you use hand commands or voice commands?
What do I use? I
Mhm.
just use a combination of the two. Like I'll snap my fingers and I'll give voice commands. I don't know, because she hasn't left yet and she hasn't gone through the training, I don't know the extent of what they're going to teach her. On my understanding and what I'm believing from all the information I've gathered so far, it's going to be vocal commands. So it's going to be 1 to 2 word commands to her to do things, and then she'll do them. The other thing about the training that I forgot to mention a minute ago is once she's done with the 2 months of training at the prison, she comes to me, and then I go to Richie's office where he has his Faithful Canine Trainer organization, and they tailor fit these commands to me and Cobb. So whatever command I give her would be tailor fit for one of my needs. And so that's the way that they're going to do that. So me specifically, I use a combination of both, like snapping my fingers, making noises, using my hands, and verbal commands. And I believe what they're going to do is verbal commands.
Well, both make sense. Me having a 15-year-old dachshund, he's recently gone deaf. I'm using uh, hand signals as best I can, but uh, God bless you and everything that you're doing with that. That's so amazing that we can actually train in young dogs to help people, in their daily activities. Like you said, dropping your medication or go get my shoes or go get the newspaper. I mean, we saw that in the cartoons years ago, right? So that's just so cool. And I can really appreciate the need for that in the community around us for sure.
Yes,
Do they, Anthony, do they have any age qualifications for the dogs?
I'm not sure. I know they don't want like new puppies, 6 months old or younger. But other than that,
How old is Cobb?
Cobb is 18 months old. She's a year and a half.
Okay, very good. So how do we distinguish again what they're trained for at the prison and what they're trained for by Richie's program?
So the program to train the service dogs, from my understanding, is pretty universal. Like you can go a number of different places and get it, but because the Idaho State Police dog handlers are trained how to handle dogs, they incorporate this into their training.
Excuse me.
Like my aunt is not using this organization, but my aunt who lives in Michigan is getting her dog trained to be a service dog, and I guess pretty similar to what Cobb's going to go through.
That's great. So is this a program that you, excuse me, program that you qualified? Sorry, man. Goodness, it's allergy season in Colorado.
Sorry,
Is this
David. I'm
something
having a
that
connection issue. I can't hear you guys.
you can't hear me?
Like you're
Can you?
coming in and out. I can hear you now.
Okay. So my question is: this a program that you got through the VA, or was this another program through a different public service?
Yeah. So Canines with a Cause is based out of Minnesota. They're a nonprofit that works exclusively with veterans and veterans' families. But because they're in Minnesota and they don't have a local office here in Eastern Washington and in Northern Idaho, they partner with other nonprofits in the area. So that's where Faithful Fields and Richie came into play. So I reached out to Canines with a Cause. Canines with a Cause reached out to Richie, with whom they've worked several times before to do this. Now, Richie's organization is separate. Richie's organization will provide this type of training for dogs, but he'll work with anybody. He doesn't just work exclusively with veterans. He'll work with children, he'll work with other people, and he'll go as far as he'll fly you out to his office in Idaho and he'll partner you with a dog that's already been through training. And that's how far he goes to help people out with this.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I had shared with Anthony that I did tell someone about this. A gal who's local here in Tucson, her sibling and children live elsewhere, but I guess my understanding was there are 3 children that all have some unusual catastrophic disease. And but especially with 3, I mean, I don't even know if it's possible for them to share the same service dog or if they all have to have their own. But anyway, she was very delighted for me to pass on the information so that she could get in touch with her sibling and see if they could help her. I believe they're all boys. I think it's nephews. But so both of us were pretty excited that we were able to pass something on that was, and hopefully get them some help as well.
Yeah, that would be incredible. It is my understanding from different people I've talked to 2 things. Number one, 9 times out of 10 or 9.5 times out of 10, insurance companies will not cover service animals and the cost of training and acquiring service animals. The second thing that is in my understanding is depending upon the extent of training that service animal needs, it will cost you anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 out of pocket. So the way I look at it is through these two organizations partnering together, I'm getting $50,000 of training for about $300.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've looked into training because I'm gonna, be ready for my next pet too. So it's not cheap anywhere you look. I mean, even a dog walker is, $40 an hour, $50 an hour. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So, Anthony, I didn't prep you for this question, so you can defer if you want. But how do you feel? How do you feel you're going to feel emotionally when Cobb goes away for 2 months next week on Saturday?
Funny because I've talked about that. I live on my parents' ranch. They're kind of in a shared ranching situation, so they have 20 acres. The ranch next door is 40, so it's 60 acres combined. The livestock guardian dogs, they run all 60 acres and protect the livestock and things of that nature. Well, long story short, my mom had a Chihuahua that was about 12 years old. And about 2 months ago, the Chihuahua got out and some kind of predator got the Chihuahua and it died. So my siblings and I came together, we chipped in the money and we all bought my mom a brand new Chihuahua puppy. So she has this puppy now that's 4 months old. And we went all the way to Arizona to pick it up for her. So I was in Arizona about a month and a half ago, and we got my mom the dog. And I was there because my kids live in Arizona, like I said, I'll be back there. So the puppy, whose name is Noelle, and my dog Cobb, they play together. They're like best of friends. Cobb is 18 months old. This puppy's 4 months old, but they're inseparable. So as we've talked about this, of course, I'm going to miss her. I'm going to miss the companionship. That's why I got her. I'm a single guy, 40 years old. I needed the companionship. When I told my dad I was getting a dog, he said, "What are you getting a dog for? You need a dog like you need a hole in the head." I said, "Well, put it this way. I've been divorced twice, so it's either a dog or another woman." He said, "Get the dog." So, of course, I'm going to miss her. But my mom and I have talked about this over the last couple of weeks. Really, what the impact we're going to miss is the impact that she has on Noelle, because Noelle, being a 4-month-old Chihuahua puppy, really does look up to Cobb. And the fact of the matter is, the other thing we've talked about is, honestly, when it comes to Cobb, I hit the jackpot. So I adopted her, like Debbie said, and I actually adopted her in Tucson from the Pima Animal Care Center. It's called PAC. And that's where I adopted her from back in January of 2023. And she's lived with me ever since. Well, to adopt a dog that of the intellect and the easiness to train of Cobb, and with her abilities, just her natural abilities, I hit the jackpot. So it's going to be difficult to have her away for 2 months, but the end game is worth it, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
So absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you're lucky too that you have or fortunate, I should say, that you have the other dogs that are going to be around to sort of to help you fill that void.
Yes. Yeah.
So Cobb, how do you feel? No. Cobb's
she's
probably
out
going to
here
be
running around right now. I don't know if the LGDs are out. I haven't heard them, but she's out here exploring something.
She's probably going to be missing you just as much, or maybe even more, because all she's going to know is somebody that's being mean to her to try to get her to do things that maybe she doesn't want to do all the time.
Yeah, and she's naturally an affectionate dog. Like, literally, when I'm sitting on my couch, she'll be up here next to me, and she just did this just yesterday. She'll come right onto my lap, and she's a 35-pound dog. She's a border beagle. She's what they call a border beagle, so she's a border collie beagle mix. And my veterinarian just said, "You hit the jackpot. This breed of dog is intelligent. They're energetic." She said, "You really hit the jackpot with this dog." That's what the veterinarian said. But anyway, I'll be sitting there, and Cobb will come right up onto my lap, and she'll throw both of her paws over my shoulder, and she'll literally hug me, and she'll stay there for like a minute. Excuse me. So she's naturally an affectionate dog, which is going to help with the depression and the PTSD.
That's great. That's really good.
So she's definitely going to miss me. But hey, we've all seen the videos of soldiers coming back from like an 18-month deployment, and their dog practically mauls them, licking them to death, and so happy to be reunited with them. So,
yeah, Yeah.
Some of my favorite internet videos are the reuniting of soldiers with their pets. So
Yeah.
we'll definitely have to get some footage of that one and share it with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, when she gets out, when she gets released, when she gets paroled, my kids should be here. And I don't know if I mentioned to you, David, or not. I know that Debbie knows this, but the actual kennels are actually within the prison. And so they stay right there in the kennel in the prison, and the inmates go and get the dog every day. And then they bring them over to a room where the state troopers are, and they work together to train the dog. So she's actually going behind the wire, behind bars, and she's getting locked up for 2 months.
Yeah, I think Colorado has a program like that as well too, through our canine unit. So it's good to hear that they're doing that like pretty much around the country. I think it's very important not only for the dogs but for the prisoners as well, and
Definitely.
eventually for the owners that they're taking care of.
Oh, absolutely. And I told Debbie this last time, David. I was a federal corrections officer in the Bureau of Prisons for almost a decade. I did right at about 9.5 months. And one of the things that really spoke to me in working with the Bureau of Prisons is the recidivism rate. And what the recidivism rate in prison is it's simply the rate of return. So what percentage of federal inmates return to prison? And since the Reagan administration in the United States in the federal prison system, our recidivism rate has never fallen below 80%. So 80% of federal inmates will return to prison, is what that means. And one of the things that I learned very early on in my career in corrections is a large part of the reason, in my opinion, that inmates return to prison is they have no purpose once they get released. So if you were a gangbanger running with a gang, that was your purpose. Now you've been arrested and been told that can no longer be your purpose. Now you're in prison. What is prison for? To correct the behavior. It's called a correctional environment. Okay, so now we correct the behavior, but what positive step are we giving them to transition back into that? We've outlawed work crews. I don't know why. I think work crews are a good idea to give inmates a skill. And so one of the things I really appreciate about this program and why I picked this particular program is because they're working with inmates to give them a skill. That's going to bring down the recidivism rate, because when those inmates get out of prison, guess what? They've got a purpose.
Right. And the other thing is that it's not a type of skill that it's like a redundant skill that has no feelings attached.
Right.
It's something that people are going to be vested in, that they're going to be caring about the dogs and have the dogs caring about them. And the same, and it would follow through when they get out. And, hopefully they are able to get a job that has something to do with training or somehow working with the animals.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could transfer into working with dogs at a groomer or a vet assistant or anything like that. That's a great thing because I mean most of my friends own pets, and I can honestly say that my best friends are always willing to take care of my animals if I need to go out of town or if there's an emergency. And they tend to be the people that are very productive in society.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just if you find a pet owner, personal opinion, that's going to be somebody that's really trying to do the right thing for not only themselves but the community because they love their pets, they love their kids, and all that stuff.
And we've all seen and heard the testimonials, for example, of what pets do in rehabilitation settings. So, for
Hmm.
example, you bring a dog into a hospital, patients like that. You bring them to a rehabilitation center, even if it's physical rehabilitation. The patients have a higher rate of healing and of having positive attitudes and wellness. Part of wellness is a state of mind. I'm not saying it's all completely psychological, but there's a part of wellness that's a state of mind. And we all know the impact that dogs can have on that. Well, in my opinion, the same is true of inmates. So these dogs have a positive inmate psychological impact upon the inmates. Plus, the inmates have a skill for when they get out of prison. You put those two things together, you have an ex-con that has a dog that's going to help people and give the inmate purpose. It's a win-win-win.
Couldn't
Yes.
agree more.
Yeah. Very good. Well, I appreciate you coming back on, and we're gonna talk about something else. I'm not sure if you have this experience either from. It sounds like you probably would have, at least from being around the ranch area where you've got more than one animal. But we're going to talk a little bit about what happens when you have one dog and you get another one. Whether there's any funny stories or whether things are problematic. So, David, do you have something to share in that respect?
Oh, probably a few. So, taking Peyton and Duke up to Divide up at my friend's house up there. They had at the time two Chihuahuas. Now there's three up there, but uh, we would bring them up and they'd do the whole initial interaction. We'd shove them out the back doggy door into the doggy yard and let them do their thing. And but a memorable occasion was the one dog. He didn't like sticks, and of course, because we were in the mountains, we had walking sticks everywhere. So if anybody grabbed a walking stick, the Chihuahua would start growling. So we did a little video, and Peyton was right there in the video. But as I was walking forward with the stick, the Chihuahua was going after my foot, and then he finally lanched onto my foot, and so we did the whole exorcism thing. The power of Christ compels you, but it was just a territorial thing because of my dogs and his dogs. And they weren't super people aggressive unless you were really messing with them. But it was just funny to see how they interact together. Two different breeds, two different dogs, but it was really early in there. That was probably the second or third time they'd been up there. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, I was writing it down. It was fun because our dog Pepper lived to be around 20, 21 years old. We weren't sure how old because we weren't sure whether he was a year and a half or 2 years when we got him. But obviously he lived that long. He had several other housemates. And the first couple, I can't even remember any stories. So they must have gotten along right away from the very beginning. But when he was very toward end of life, we got a puppy. And having a puppy and an old dog is very interesting because Pepper did not want to move fast at all because he was old. That was his privilege, right? But the puppy, little Bob, was like, okay, he'd sort of ignore him because Pepper wouldn't warm up to him or anything. But then when they would go outside, little Bob would start chasing him and Pepper would run. And of course, that was the only time that he ran at that age, and he was trying to get away. But little Bob was like, oh, he changed his mind. He wants to play after all. So we got to the point where we had to let him outside at different times. That was sort of a pain. But Anthony, do you have any such stories?
Okay, so I think it's my connection, but you guys were coming in and out when you explained what the story is about. So you can briefly ask the question again about what the stories are about.
Yeah, about having a dog and then introducing another dog as a companion or not companion.
Well, yeah, so I arrived here in Washington, in Eastern Washington. We live in a town called Newport. I arrived here in Newport last September 15th of 2023. Well, my mom had the first Chihuahua I was talking to you about, Luna. And Luna was a 15-year-old female, and she ruled the roost. I mean, our livestock guardian dogs, there's 4 of them, and they're all like a big white bear. And so Luna would take those Pyrenees on like she was going to rip their throats out. So when I got here with Cobb last September, I mean, Luna acted like she had been betrayed. I am not going to mess with this dog. This dog is not going to be my friend, and blah, blah. Now, toward the end of Luna's life, when the predator got her a couple months ago, that she and Cobb were getting along. But I mean, at first, she was barking at Cobb, and she was growling at Cobb, and she would run around, and she'd run up to my mom, and she'd look at my mom, and she'd bark at Cobb. She'd come back and look at my mom, and she just wasn't going to have it. And so it was very, very funny. And Cobb is energetic. That's part of the breed that she is. They're high energy dogs. And so she would be running around and barking and trying to get Luna going. And Luna just was not going to have it. So Cobb would be running around and she'd be trying to play. And she'd be looking at Luna. And she'd be down in this position. Luna would just be like, rah, 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 and just come after her and then kind of run away. So it was a really funny transition. They ended up getting along, like I said, toward the end of Luna's life. And they were inseparable at that point. But yeah, it was a funny transition for sure.
Oh yeah, it can be that way. David, did you want to show us Peyton and his wheelchair?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
he
neat.
just got stuck on my chair. I was trying to get him unstuck.
Oh dear. Well, he's
He's
definitely
he's
doing
been a
really
handful, but
well.
he's doing super good. He turned 16. I turned 49.
Wow. Have you
Great.
had him all 16 years?
Yeah, from the day he was born. His mom and dad were my first two dogs.
Okay. And I haven't heard the story, if you don't mind, just real briefly. I mean, I don't mean to take over the podcast here, but I haven't heard the story. Why does he have a wheelchair?
Well, let's start from the beginning. It's a real short story, a couple clips. So he was born blind in one eye, can't see out the other. He survived parvo. He was hit by a car, paralyzed 4 times, eaten by 3 big dogs, and then just recently hit by a forklift and dislocated his hip, and that's why he's in the wheelchair.
Oh, okay.
So
And
yeah,
I
nothing
think
ever. It's just normal.
the first time that when you were on before, Anthony, it was the crisis was the wheelchair, was getting hit by the forklift.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Now that you mention it, I do recall hearing that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he did get bit by the pit bull. They're best friends. She's my girlfriend, but they had a little face to face interaction. But he's recovered from that fully too. So yeah,
Yeah.
Um,
dogs will be dogs
so hit by a
sometimes.
forklift. Does Peyton go to work with you?
He did, yeah. He's been a full time dog with me for I think about 6 years now. Him and his dad used
Oh,
to go with me,
that's
and
awesome.
actually he'll hop up on the forklift with me and unload the trucks.
You're gonna have to wait a
So
minute.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So our farm tractor, my mom's old Chihuahua Luna, used to jump right up onto the 4-wheelers and then would go right up onto the farm tractor with my dad. So my dad would be
It's
driving the tractor,
awesome.
little Chihuahua just sitting there on the tractor, like she was the place.
It's so cool. I love to see when dogs get involved in everyday life like that. That's just cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, very good. And like to put in a plug for the medicinal mushrooms that we have found that are great for our pets. I know that David feels that Peyton has recovered a lot more quickly from his various things, most recently the forklift incident, because he's been using these. And I know I feel the same way with my pet, and he does not want to come inside unless he is promised a treat. In fact, he walked away now, but he was at the door a second ago waiting to go out. So we're Emily, would you like to close us out here in a minute? So again, my name is Debbie Hayes, and I'm certified in pet nutrition. I'm certified pet sitter. I do some pet sitting occasionally. And David is a longtime podcaster. So the two of us partnered up to do this, and the World of Ability Network led us to this and let us take it from there.
So again, everybody, we are here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 o'clock Central, 9 Eastern. And anybody interested in being on the show to let us know, as well as any of the other shows in the network. And yeah.
Yep, we can you want to put the website up there, debspets.com, if people want to get some more information. Really prefer that you reach out to me, and I can tell you a little bit more details about the medicinal mushrooms. First documented use with humans, because we do have human products as well, was actually in the 13th century in the Ming Dynasty. So they've been around for a long time. It's not something that is new to the block. So would love to have you look at them. And we say that they're treats, but they're really supplements. Don't tell the dogs.
Don't tell the dogs. And Anthony, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find you and your organizations that you're working with?
Okay, so my name is Anthony Dunham. You can find me on all the socials. I've even recently joined LinkedIn. So you can find me on all the socials: Facebook, Instagram, Truth Social, TikTok. I'm on all of them. The two organizations, the main one that works exclusively with veterans, which was the first one I got in touch with, is called Canines with a Cause. The work that they're doing is tremendous. And then if you know anybody that's not a veteran but is in need of a service animal, have them reach out to Faithful Fields in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and talk to Richie. He'd love to have a conversation with them and see if they can't help. And then let me just put a shameless plug in here. In about a decade, I'm going to open up a therapeutic equine ranch. So I look forward to partnering with Richie. Richie wants to have a dog ranch that's associated with an equine ranch, so we can kind of do both for veterans.
Very good.
That's exciting.
Yes, it is very exciting. And I've got a couple of names I'll give to you of people that are doing that now.
Okay.
One of them actually is not so much focused on the animals, but just having a property. There would be animals there. They have a building now that has so that they can have a community hall. It has a kitchen and restroom and so forth, but they can't have any veterans living there. It's but it's designed for to help veterans who are suicidal.
Yep.
And will be, when they get the actual overnight facilities, it can be either individuals or families that could be there for as long as a year, or they might need just a few nights there. So projectdiehard.org. I think actually I had mentioned that to you before, Anthony, but I'm not sure I gave you the information. So
yes, let me write that down. So.
Anyway, okay, very good. And Emily, thank you very much.
Thanks, Emily, for hosting and engineering. Appreciate it.
We have Emily do the closeout, and then we keep talking.
I know. How about them apples? Anthony, so glad to have you back on the show. Appreciate it. Deb, always good to see you.
Yep.
I look forward to following up with you guys when her training.
Yeah, we definitely have to do an after here and see the well-trained Cobb. Okay, Emily, thank you. You can do your thing now by cutting the